Welcome to the Money Soapbox series. We are in week 11, where we are calling out and confronting those toxic spending habits that have been keeping us broke and stuck in the poorhouse. Now, this week, we are diving into one of the sneakiest forms of toxic spending, and that is the status and appearance bucket. This is all about the need to appear a certain way instead of being who you truly are. Where we're dressed up in drag for the world, but go home to rags. It's about looking rich rather than actually building wealth and living in overflow. So, what am I talking about? What am I referencing? Well, the first one is what I call logo over legacy. That is where we are buying those designer outfits, those designer purses, designer goods and products that are bought for status. Those $500 shoes, bags, or watches. It's not about quality, but it's all about the logo. Now, here's the reality: marketing is all about smoke and mirrors. Companies repackage the same product under different labels to charge you more. I'll give you an example: a t shirt. A t shirt that is made by a manufacturer. Okay. That t shirt that is made by that manufacturer can be found in a Walmart store at one price. Now you place a logo on it, and I won't name any specific logos because it doesn't matter. Slap on a brand name or specific logo. That t shirt now, because of the logo, is going to cost you more. But it's the same t shirt. You're paying for the logo, for the right to wear the logo. And this happens not just in clothing, but it happens in shoes, it happens in electronics. You're making them rich while robbing yourself of financial freedom. You're falling for what I call the flex culture. You're spending money on status symbols because that's all that it is, just to look successful, even if it's silently bleeding us dry. Now, what's the next item that falls under this bucket? It's the car payment trap. Getting into car payments you cannot afford while going broke trying to look the part. That's a costly mask that you're wearing. Let's talk numbers. Now, as of 2024, the average monthly car payment in the US for a new vehicle is $742 a month. A used vehicle is $525 a month. For a leased vehicle, it is $600 a month. Nearly or close to 19% of people are actually financing new cars and are paying over $1,000 a month just to look wealthy. or portray that they're wealthy to look the part. I mean, that is mortgage money in some areas. I remember talking to a finance person at a car at a gar ooh, sorry, at a car dealership. And he straight up confessed his car payment was $1,400 for a luxury vehicle. He even admitted he was embarrassed to say it out loud because deep down inside he knew it was ridiculous. But that still didn't stop him from falling into the trap. He was in the business and still got caught up in the image trap. I've also met people driving luxury cars who couldn't even afford an oil change or new tires. That's what I call they're dressed up for the runway, but they're living on a tightrope. Now, the next one, you rarely hear about it, but it's actually very common, and that's the plastic surgery procedure. It's very real, but it's rarely talked about. It's the silent spending driven by insecurity and the comparison trap that's fueled by toxic social media culture. Now, the way I came across this was I've had several people where they have shared stories with me in confidence. And I'll share one story. A young lady in her 30s, she had racked up over $100,000 in loans from repeated cosmetic procedures. Now, I had no idea why she thought she even needed plastic surgery because she was stunning. She was absolutely beautiful, but she felt like she always needed to fix something and it was never enough. She was always chasing perfection. Now, although she didn't share the story much with people, she also didn't think it was a problem racking up over $100,000 in loans to have these procedures done. In her mind, this was the price that you have to pay for beauty. She was trying to fill a void that these surgeries could never fill. And she also hid the debt from her partner at the time. And to my surprising, this was more common than I thought. Now, the next item is keeping up with the Joneses or the culture. This is when we start buying a bigger home, the latest technology, or even exclusive memberships, not because we need them, but because others have them. Living in a luxury apartment that you barely have time to enjoy because you're working multiple jobs or gigs just to be able to afford. That's not living, that's surviving in style. You're broke, but you're broke on a higher level. You look good, you smell good, but you're still broke. The next toxic spending habit is what I call the rented lifestyle, where we've been sold a fantasy, an illusion Now, before the world of social media and the influencers that we see today, back then there were shows like the MTV Cribs, the lifestyles of the rich and famous, where they showed off homes and lifestyles. But what people fail to realize is that these homes and lifestyles, they were often rented or staged. Nothing was owned, but the illusion was sold to us as success. And so, because we fall for the illusion, we have people that are trying to fund that same influencer style lifestyle through vacations, photo op meals, designer outfits, all for likes, all while their lifestyle is rented, filtered, and financed. Their wealth, quote unquote wealth, lives on social media. Offline, they're barely getting by. We see these people, these so called millionaires, where they're on social media, they are showing their homes, their cars, only for years later to have those homes and those cars be taken from them. Now, social media will have you going broke trying to keep up with somebody who's faking their lifestyle. And why? Because we're trying to be like them. We're trying to fit into their quote unquote culture. The next toxic spending under this bucket is the image maintenance. This is all about self care. Now, I'm all for self care, but it crosses the line when we are overdoing the nails, the lashes, or brows, and dropping hundreds on wigs and bundles just to keep up a look that we cannot afford. Now, over the years, many women have shared with me what they spend on hair alone, and I was shocked. And for what? Just to keep up appearances for other people. The next toxic spending habit is splurging to look generous or to look like you have the money, where you're buying lavish gifts, not from overflow, but to look generous. Again, it's another mask where you're giving from a place of lack just to maintain an image or to impress people. So, the spending habits that fall under this bucket is all about pretending to be someone that you are not. And it's driven by a poverty mindset. Now, the good news is it's a mindset, it isn't permanent, and it can be changed as long as you make the decision and you're willing to change it by renewing your mind. So, how do you shift out of the poverty mindset that is fueling and driving the toxic spending habits? Well, the first step is to recognize the issue. Recognize that you're trying to be something or someone that you are not. That's the first step, and it's a big first step. because it requires that you get real with yourself. And a lot of people, unfortunately, this is a hard thing for them to do. They rather live in an illusion rather than getting real with themselves. Or something drastic in their life needs to happen where they hit rock bottom that is going to force them to get real with themselves. So this is a huge first step, is recognizing that, you know what, I'm trying to be something that I'm not. I'm trying to keep up with the culture, with the Kardashians, but at this moment in time, I don't have the dollars to match that lifestyle. The second step is to make a decision. Now, this is another huge step because until you make a decision, nothing changes. You have to decide for yourself that you want to actually be wealthy and affluent instead of pretending to be. Faking it, it's just going to keep you stuck exactly where you are. Now, once you come to terms with this is a toxic spending pattern and you make the decision, step number three is to align your actions that's going to support the decision that you made. Now, half the battle is making that decision, because once you make the decision, your actions will start to line up. So buying those $200 sneakers is no longer a flex. You've come to the realization that you're making them rich and keeping yourself broke. And now you're making decisions where your money is working for you and not just building somebody else's brand. Being a consumer does not build wealth, it transfers it straight into somebody else's pocket. Ask yourself this: what is this $200 purse? And I'm just using purse as an example, it could be anything. What is that $200 item doing that a $50 item can't do? The more you ask these kinds of questions, the more you begin to shift from a consumer mindset to a producer or multiplier mindset, where you start spending based on what you need and you invest the rest to build your lifestyle instead of somebody else's. Shifting your mindset. You're spending based on needs and needs alone. Now, for a lot of people, all you need to do is recognize it, make a decision, and then the actions will follow. But for some people, this goes deeper. It's rooted. So, how do you know if it's deeply rooted? One of the ways that you know is you take a look at your family history. Does it run in the family? Now, to give you an example, I was talking to someone recently who told me everybody in her family wears brand names, no exceptions. And I asked her why. And she said because it represents status. She even had a name for it. Then she told me how they literally try to outdo each other by buying more expensive stuff than the next family member. And I asked her why she thought that was. And she honestly didn't know. She couldn't answer. She stopped and thought about it, and she just said, "Well, it's all about status. It's all about looking good." This way of thinking was just normal for her because it ran in the family. She didn't know any different. So if this is your situation, how do you handle it? How do you break free from that? The first thing is understanding that this is not a normal thing. It's about trying to fill a void that will never be filled by things, where you're seeking validation through things and how the world sees you. And so you need to get an understanding is what is that void, because that void is different for everybody. For me, that void came as a result of trauma and abuse as I was growing up. And so I would go on these, I guess what you call these binges, because I would be good for a while and then I would go on these spending binges whenever I needed to feel good about myself or about the situation that I was in. I would just go and spend, 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 spend. And so once you understand what the void is, then you can get to the root. Now, last week I mentioned that as you are tracking your expenses, to start tracking your emotional state or your feelings before making that purchase. Why? Because it's going to give you insight into why you are spending. What are the emotions that are driving you to spend? And so this week I want you to dig even deeper, where you're asking yourself, what is the void I'm trying to fill by buying this? And then you're going to write it down and you're going to sit with it. Write it down, sit with it. After a couple weeks of tracking, you should start to see a pattern. Now, sometimes it takes another person to help us to see it before we can actually connect the dots, especially if it's deeply rooted. If you feel like you need help working through this part, drop a link down to someone that I trust who can help you. It's someone that I went to. She's all about getting to the root. I highly, highly recommend her based on what she has done for me. She works in partnership with the Holy Spirit. So if she's working with the Holy Spirit, then I mean, they're going to go deep. Now, this is not it's not for everybody. Like I said, most people, it's just a matter of identifying it, making the decision, and then the actions will follow. But for the ones where it's rooted, deeply rooted in the family, and they want to make a change, then I'll go ahead and drop the link in the comment, or I'm sorry, in the description box for you. Okay. Now remember, we're not doing a financial diet. This is all about building a healthy financial lifestyle. And that's going to take commitment and real change. This is all about doing all the work before we get to the budget. Because if we don't do the work before we get to the budget, then the budget, it's useless. You're going to follow the budget for a little bit and then you're going to relapse. Now, being wealthy isn't about looking rich. It's about being intentional. It's about spending on what you truly need and asking, what's the return on this? If I buy this, what's the return? What am I getting? The bottom line is this: if nobody could see it, whatever it is you're planning on buying, if nobody could see it, would you still buy it? Now, I hope this episode was a wake up call where it's time to strip the mask and get real about the choices that we make so that we can appear wealthy instead of becoming wealthy. So that is it for this video. On the next video, we'll continue tackling and addressing those toxic spending habits that are keeping you in the poorhouse. Thank you all for tuning in to this week's Money Soapbox series.